Call the Kitty Hawk Town Council to order this Tuesday, April 7, 2015, at Kitty Hawk Town Hall. It is now 6 p.m. Welcome to all of you that came out tonight. I was kind of expecting a larger crowd, but that's okay. We can handle small. Would you join us in a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Opposed? We don't have any. All right, next we have public comment. Has anyone signed up for public comment?
No,
Does anyone wish to speak at this public comment? All right, come up and give us your name and let them take your mug shot in the camera.
Are we referring to the project nourishing the beach now? Is this the time to speak? Or are you going to call for another session to speak?
There will be another session to speak at the end of the council meeting.
All right, do I sign up here and speak later?
You can do it that way, or you can, yeah, go ahead and do it that way. Then the clerk can call you.
Kentwood, you can speak now if you want to. I mean,
Yeah,
you
it'll-
can speak
it'll-
now or later, whichever you want to do. If you're already up there,
Now and later.
okay. Whatever you,
The question he asked me.
How long does it take to speak before I wear you folks out?
you got 3 minutes.
I was at one of the meetings and made a short comment that didn't probably get off the ground good. My name's Kentwood Turner. I'm a resident of Pasquotank County, across the Sound. And we have a place on Lindbergh that seem to be the Easterners now. I guess the Easterners against the Westerners, the way y'all got the map on that. And I would like to talk a little bit about disadvantage of being an Easterner. The small place that we have is 4104 Lindbergh, and I'm sure all of you know what hail and wind is. I had to drop mine this year. It got to $2,752. The cottage is 5 years. I believe I could replace a home roof if it blew off of that. If we have a strong storm to come in, seems like we're fighting the ocean, because the water will hang around 10 days before we get a chance to get in, drive in, and utilize our property. Seems to be, if the water comes over the berm, it's going to stay until it's pumped back. I mean, I guess we just have resolved to the fact that that's nature. You got to pump it back where it came from. From what I have checked, we're paying on the eastern side about 4 to 1 per square foot for land. This helps the tax books quite a bit. And it's not easy to tell somebody to come use your cottage and give them waiters to go to the cottage, because sometimes it is 10 days before we get in there. And I know they're trying. It's just nature. We can't beat that ocean. But it seems like we forget that everything is against the Easterners. My observation is down on this beach, if it wasn't for the sun worshipers and the sun lovers, I don't believe people would travel the distance they do just to come here to see the dunes or see our barefoot senators pier down there. It's not that much if it wasn't for the beaches to lay out on and enjoy it. We Easterners are not the only one that enjoy it. The Westerners come over and enjoy it also. That was brought up, I think, one of the meetings at the bathhouses were used just as much by the Western people on the west side as it was the travelers that came and visitors. So we got some strikes against us. We're kind of defending a situation that we're helpless on. We can't fight that ocean alone, but yet somehow the figures got up to $5 per 100 and 14 per 100. And that 14 drops on the Easterner again. That's almost 4 to 1 extra tax on our back. And I'm wondering, has the 5 people that vote on this commission stopped to think that we might be driving people away from what used to be a good thing? It's gotten to be a rather expensive thing. Like to pay my taxes and like to get along with people. Unfortunately, you can't be at both places at the same time. I got a residence in Elizabeth City. I do admire the people that live here 24/7 because they pull their civic duty down at the courthouse, sitting on jurors, doing their part where we don't do it. But I would like to let it be known, if we can tonight, how many people that will be voting on this distribution of this assessment of extra money we've got to pay live on the east side? And how many live on the west side?
I'm east.
You're Easterner?
I'm east.
You're in tough shape then. How many are the Westerners live on the west side? Have you ever thought that it's fair to make judgment on the Easterners with 4 to 1 almost ratio there on taxes? Had you given that any consideration? If not, I would like for you to run it by your conscience and help us a little bit. We seem to be losing the battle slowly but surely. I don't know where all these meetings, why there's not more people here that are concerned. Maybe I'm in the old generation that don't have the funds that these new guys have, but I do know there's quite a bit of expenses over there on that side, the eastern side. Right, lady?
Well,
Yeah.
yes, but some of the expenses that you mentioned are also on the west side. The wind and hail, I'm pretty sure.
Well, I know
is
high water
pretty
is,
bad.
yeah.
Yeah,
I've
the
been
high
back there.
water, though, is
I've been back there
definitely
looking.
ours.
I've seen some aired out furniture back there. It's not good, not good. When that ocean decides to come aboard, it comes aboard.
Certainly
But I
does.
do, and I would, and I'd plead that we're in this game together. Without the sun lovers and the sun worshipers, we're all in it together. It would hurt bad. To lose it, I'm 100% in favor of nourishment. But I would like for you to consider a more equalized distribution of the way it's done, even if it's $1 per dollar for everybody. We all benefit from it. And if I were in business, I'd even benefit more from it because I'd be looking for the tourists to help me. So if you will, give that consideration before you throw the cat out of the house and sell us out. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, then let's move on. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. All right, where am I at here? Now we're coming to the municipal service districts. And let me say, right from the get-go, what we're doing here tonight I expect council to make a decision on whether or not to have a municipal service taxing district or more or none. Any rates, any actual rate will be established at a later date during the budget process. So, where do we go from here with beach nourishment? I'm going to talk a little bit in addition to what you see on the monitor, but this is kind of basically summarizing it. The total projected cost is $23.3 million. 80%, or an estimated $18.6 million of that, will be contributed from Dare County using occupancy tax funds. The town of Kitty Hawk must contribute 20%, or approximately $4.7 million. All right, findings from the legal review. As we did the initial hearing, we found that there were some issues that legally we had to review. So the first issue was the district should only include areas subject to storm damage from ocean flooding. The reason for that is council has never considered trying to save oceanfront homes or property as a priority. It's always been about infrastructure protection, damage control, flooding reduction, those sort of mitigating circumstances. That covers everything basically from 158 East. So in order to be able to defend that, legal has advised that we need to reduce what we had. So, a summary of input from the public hearings that we held, and we held 2 of them. One was an extension of the other. A majority of the citizens that responded support beach nourishment project. We had over 3,000 packets sent to various property owners, only property owners, not voting tax members. And we had, well, under 300 response, okay? The percentage was pretty low. That doesn't mean that individual council members like myself and Jeff and the rest of us don't have input, the ear of town citizens. We do. And they told us things. They didn't necessarily respond by email or at the hearing or those sort of forums, but we had other input. A number of the respondents felt the tax rates between districts were not equitable. Others believed additional districts should be added, such as separate east of 12 and then between the highways. So, for consideration, after a legal review and much thought on each of our parts, this is where we go. I'm going to propose to the council tonight some options, and then we're going to have to make a decision. The first option is adjust the original municipal service district to include only those properties subject to storm damage from ocean flooding. The second option would be to establish a municipal service district for oceanfront property east of NC 12. And the third option, establish a town-wide property tax, no municipal service taxing district. And then, of course, there's always the option of doing nothing. Now, down at the bottom, you'll please note, actual tax rates will be determined in the budget process and will be adopted by June 30th. The next hearing on any of this, as far as rates, would be at the hearing for budget proposal. All right. A municipal service district must include flood-prone areas. An option is to adjust the municipal service district, the 2 that we had, to include only those properties subject to storm damage from ocean flooding. Would you put that potential map up there, please? All right. You'll notice there is no MSDB. But bottom line is this. The MSDA that we originally had was between the highways and east of there, and some that were west of there. Those boundaries have to be adjusted to include only areas subject to ocean water impacts. One of the options is to remove properties west of 158 not damaged or flooded by ocean water. Only properties receiving direct benefit from beach nourishment project would remain in the district. The MSDB would not be established. It does not meet those standards. It doesn't receive ocean water, storm damage, or flooding. It has no direct, and those are keywords, direct benefit from beach nourishment projects. Beach nourishment project provides indirect benefits to the whole town. Council has long recognized that. Possible, now here I am going to propose some rates because we had rates in the original out. Some proposed possible MSD funding reflecting legal review results. The proposed rates to fund Kitty Hawk Share based on direct and indirect benefit under this option. A townwide 2-cent property tax increase to add to the existing 2 cents in a capital fund for flood damage prevention. We already have 2 cents that we'd set aside. We'd add 2 cents to that. An MSDA, the one that you see proposed, at 12 cents plus townwide 2 cents tax increase for a total of 14 cents increase in MSDA. All right, next slide, please. All right, the other option that some folks wanted was to establish an MSD for oceanfront property. 1 cent generates approximately $5,000 in revenue per year on the oceanfront, and that includes the Hilton. We don't get much revenue east of 12. When you figure this, any special obligation bond that we talked about would last 5 years. We're only talking $25,000 per year for a 5-year special obligation bond, so you're only getting $125,000 over the life of the project at the construction project. This option would require an additional notification and hearing process. That information came from the North Carolina School of Government. They would not, even though we've sent packets to all the people, we'd have to redo that again with hearing, notification, and packets. There is very little cost to benefit considering the expense of another hearing process and future administrative cost for trying to establish a separate oceanfront MSD. Third option, establish a townwide tax. In other words, don't establish a municipal service district and fund the project with a townwide tax. Not dedicating funds in a special service district could affect acquisition of special obligation bonds. In other words, our ability to raise the money to do the project. Another key point, and this one was brought up many times by people that did respond, if you don't have a taxing district, it does not ensure that future councils will not use the tax funds for something other than the intended beach nourishment project. And then, of course, our last option is do nothing. That's totally inconsistent with the majority opinion of the property owners, at least those that responded and the ones that we have talked to individually. Also to consider, the Kitty Hawk Share would then go to the other towns, a Buxton project, and now probably dredging Oregon Inlet. That's a new one for us. Also, having passed on an opportunity to try something to save our infrastructure, Kitty Hawk will be in a poor position to ask for state or federal assistance after a disruptive storm. So, going through each of those options, I'm going to ask council to give us some comment on anything that you have to add to that before I ask what we want to do next. Tim, would you start, since you live over there?
Yeah.
And you're going to have the impact.
Yeah. To address some of your comments, sir, one of the things that you mentioned is that the flooding that comes from the ocean is pretty much dedicated to us on the east side of the road. And the definition of a municipal service district is that the district is established to provide funding for services or projects which add benefit to a section of town that does not receive that same benefit. That is called direct benefit. The indirect benefits of the Beach Nourishment Project are covered under the county's occupancy tax contribution, which in this case is 80% of the project cost. So we're looking at the tourist impact pretty much being funded through the county's generosity in providing those, that large percentage of the occupancy tax. The town-wide tax does cover the benefits that are received town-wide. For instance, the inconvenience from evacuations, the lack of access to properties because of roads being closed, not flooded, but closed, while pumping operations or whatever are taking place, loss of your utilities. Those things happen town-wide in a hurricane. And to give an example of Hurricane Irene, which affected the west side of town, this beach nourishment project would really do nothing to mitigate the kind of flooding that they get on the west side of town. If there were a project that could go into effect to help with that kind of flooding, an MSD would probably be appropriate to that as well. So I'm not sure it was you, but I remember one gentleman, and I think it might be you at the public hearing, that came up with different ideas on how we could fund based on commercial or residential properties, and I believe that was you, was it not? Yeah, and the law does not allow that. The law requires that there be a map, and that the map tax rates for this particular individual project, that map has to reflect the area that receives the direct benefit from the project. And when it comes to beach nourishment, the direct benefit that we have in that MSD, if you wanted to put a name on that MSD, it would be Ocean Impact Area, and that's us. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. And so to comply with the law, that is how the MSD was developed. And I've made some notes on the comments that we got at each of the public hearings, and they fell into, you know, a category here. For instance, a very significant majority supported the Beach Nourishment Project. And that included people who also supported the MSD. They voted for the MSD approach, again, in significant majority numbers, because they understood that this was the way that we would really have to fund a beach nourishment project. Many people thought that the rates were unfair, and I do have some comments on that, which I'll get to a little bit later. For the do-nothing option, I think that was just totally inconsistent with the public support for the project. So I would say that that option we probably should not support. The other thing is that for Kitty Hawk, this is the only shot that we have for a beach nourishment project. If the county were not putting 80% share of the project forward, we wouldn't even be having these discussions, because Kitty Hawk doesn't have the tax base, doesn't have the, doesn't really have the wherewithal to do a project like this on our own. So our 20% share of the project is a challenge, but at this point, we have this one opportunity, and doing nothing, I think, is just an option that we should really not take too seriously. Creating an oceanfront MSD with the highest tax rate. Many people thought that people on the oceanfront would get additional benefit because of the damage that they would not get to their properties, which they currently do whenever there's a northeaster or even a less powerful storm that does work at their steps and their decks and leave a lot of debris near their houses. So the thing about Kitty Hawk's project is that there are 3 prioritized goals. The first of those is to reduce the vulnerability of public infrastructure, including the beach road, town roads between the highways, and utilities. The second prioritized goal is to reduce the flooding experienced in many non-oceanfront areas like Lindbergh Avenue between the highways. This flooding often makes roads impassable and does not allow efficient emergency services when those roads are impassable. And the last of the priorities is the vulnerabilities of oceanfront homes and the benefit that the project would provide to those. So when you consider that of the 3 goals, the oceanfront properties are the least important in terms of Kitty Hawk's goals, then the difference between the property tax rate on the oceanfront and the property tax rate that would be applied to the west side of the beach road and between the highways would really not have to fluctuate too much, because the oceanfront properties are receiving the benefit of those first 2 goals, and the additional benefit for the 3rd goal would probably not amount to much in terms of an increase in the tax rate over the tax rate for the east side as a whole. So if that is the case, then a penny tax increase only raises $5,000, and the mayor went over how that is really not cost-effective in terms of the time that it would take to develop another MSD, and also the expense that would be associated with the hearings and all of the notifications that would be required. Now, raising the property tax town-wide, everyone, I think, that spoke had something to say about the whole town receiving benefits from the beach nourishment project, and that is true. The whole town does receive benefit from the beach nourishment project, but only the eastern part of town, and as currently defined in the MSD map, receives the benefit of protection from ocean water flooding. The rest of town is not flooded by the ocean, or at least historically has not been. And it's that additional benefit that is the direct benefit that has to be covered in the municipal service district. So MSDB was improperly developed because it represented the town-wide benefit in that MSD. Instead, town-wide benefits need to be covered by the town-wide property tax. And that was the reason that MSDB was deleted. Now, in creating municipal service district, by law, the municipal service district has to fund services and projects which are needed in addition to those that are financed for the entire town. So the whole town doesn't require the protection from the impacts of ocean water flooding, and that would, in effect, require an additional tax rate for the eastern part of the town in the municipal service district. Melody, can you put that slide that I sent to you up here. There's the total project cost. And as you can see, Dare County, their share using occupancy tax is approximately 80% of the town's, of the whole project cost. Kitty Hawk's share, you see there, is approximately 20%. The MSD share of the project, this is the additional 12 cents that is being added to the MSD tax rate, is for the direct benefit for protection from ocean water, and it is about 2 times what is, 2 times the share of the town's piece of this project, 2 times the share of what is brought in by the townwide tax rate. So, so the proposed, the staff has looked at what the rates could be. There's a 12-cent tax rate to reflect the MSD direct benefit. The proposed MSD rate of 12 cents plus the proposed townwide property tax, which would be levied on that district, is 2.25 times the townwide share, which would be levied for the rest of town. Now, what I have done in coming up with that 2.25 times figure is added the MSD rate and the total town rate for what the MSD will be paying, and only the townwide rate for the rest of the town. So the collection would be 2.25 times on the MSD. It isn't 4 to 1, it's twice as much, but that has to account for the direct benefit received by the municipal service district. The MSD share of the total project cost, and this, remember, is with the county paying 80%, the MSD share is 14% approximately, and the rest of the town share is 6% of the project costs. The final rates, and what we have been talking about, are just the proposed rates that the staff has come up with to see how we can fund this project. The final rates will be established in the budget process if the MSD is approved, and the budget will have to be in place by the 30th of June. Now, my conclusion in going through all of these options was that I do support the creation of the Ocean Impact Municipal Service District. Given the majority support for the project, and as a resident of the Municipal Service District paying the higher rate, I believe that the Municipal Service District share of the project costs is a fair allocation based on the direct benefit received by the district.
If you haven't figured it out by now, each of us have put an awful lot of thought into it and listened carefully to everything that was brought to us. Jeff?
Emily's touched on most everything, but I do want to thank everybody for showing up, and I don't want everybody to feel that this is a east-west. It certainly isn't. This is a town situation that we've been dealing with for quite some time, with what to do with the lack of beach, and it's getting mighty close to the road at the Black Pelican right now. We have worked as a group together very hard, and we've had to make some changes, and I feel like that we've come up with what we think and legally we can do to try to make this happen. As Emily says, this is our one shot. The boat's going to be going by, and we're going to either have to get on or it's going to keep going. And with that being said, I also feel like that the creation of the Ocean Water Impact, MSD, seems to be the most sensible approach to trying to achieve our goal.
Craig? This has been an emotional subject for a lot of people, including us sitting right up here. We put a lot of hard work into this. I was in church recently, a very good friend of mine came up to me and wanted to discuss beach nourishment, so I said, sure. It was not during the service, don't worry about that. It was before service started. He happens to live in Kitty Hawk Village and didn't think that he should have to support beach nourishment at all because he lived in Kitty Hawk Village. He said he doesn't go to the beach, his children don't go to the beach, so he doesn't see where it would affect him. He shouldn't have to pay for it. I'm sure I stood there with my mouth wide open, not believing what I was hearing from a good friend of mine. Kitty Hawk is our home, and our home needs our help. It needs our help now. Doing nothing is not an option. I'm very much in favor of establishing the municipal service district or districts. I feel we have no choice but to do that, and we need to do it as soon as possible. Thank you.
I agree with what everybody said here. The law tells us what we have to do, and they said we had to do the districts in the areas that were impacted, or the district. I have family members that absolutely don't believe in this beach nourishment stuff, y'all. I'm serious. They just, I can't believe you're doing that. No. And, you know, but the bottom line is, we're in the service industry to serve the public. We're restaurateurs, we're police officers, firemen, whatever. We make our living off of the tourists that come down here. And Kentwood, they're not going to come if there's no beach here. I agree with that. So for me, the decision, although it was very, very tough, I had to look at what's the shortest point between A and B. A being where we are now, B being nourishment to the beach, with the least amount of resistance and the least amount of impact on people. And how do you do that? And I came up with those who are most benefited from the nourishment, which is what the MSD is the ones that would be taxed the most. The ones in the village who, as my relatives say, it's not going to affect me. They need to be taxed also. And so that's where the other 2 cents is going to come from. I'm in favor of the way it was laid out. Emily did a great job of explaining and going through the details and so forth, much more eloquently than I could. It's a very difficult decision for everybody involved. We spent a lot of time behind the scenes talking about this amongst ourselves, and it was very difficult to come up with. But we're never going to get this deal again. If it hadn't been for Commissioner Judd at the time when he was chairman and Bobby Out and those guys at the county, we wouldn't even be here now. I sat in this position since 2003, and we were talking about, well, if we ever get beach nourishment, but the feds aren't going to give you the money. So it was not going to be a good deal, or a deal at all, until they came up with an option that enabled us to do this. So that's kind of where I stand. I know it might not be popular with some, but you have to do what you got to do for your community, and I think this is something the town of Kitty Hawk needs to step up and do.
Thank you. That's, I appreciate all that thought process put into it. It has been long, and we heard a lot. I agree with you that municipal service district needs to be set up, because that's the best way to protect your money and make sure it goes where it needs to go. I believe that it needs to be set up not only legally, but practically for those that benefit most directly. That said, we all do share into it in some indirect way, and therefore this council has actually considered doing that. We're one of the few towns that has considered trying to charge the whole town as opposed to the other ones not doing so. So we're taking it serious, and now we need to make a commitment, yes or no, to an MSD, and that's all we're doing here tonight. The proposed rates that might come with that, we've given you as a courtesy because we don't want you to be blindsided. So do I hear a motion on an MSD?
I move to approve the, shall we call it the Ocean Impact MSD? I move that the attached resolution entitled Resolution Establishing and Creating a Kitty Hawk Beach Erosion Control and Flood and Hurricane Works Municipal Service District be approved. I further authorize the mayor to sign and the town clerk to assess said resolution.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, folks, we have an MSD, and it's basically between the highways. Thank you. Lynn, do I have to do anything with this certification of the town clerk?
Just for your information.
Just for information. All right. Next, we have some public hearings. And I'm going to split these because the first public hearing does not require swearing people that want to speak, and the second one does. So do I hear a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are now in public hearing for a text amendment. Rob, you're up.
The first public hearing is for a text amendment to add language to subsections 42,544 and 42,546 that would allow shared parking on two adjacent sites. Currently, the way that the ordinance is written, shared parking is allowed, but it's between two uses within the same site, such as a shopping center. The language, there's three subsections that were brought to us by the applicant that would add a couple of words. 42,544 would be amended to say, within any one site or on two adjacent sites, the required parking for any number of separate uses may be combined on the site. 42,544K, any off-street parking space required by any use permitted in any residential or commercial district shall be provided on the same lot with the use by which it is required, or in combination with an adjacent lot, provided the applicant has secured a shared parking agreement and conditional use permit as described in 42,544J. And in 42,546, the minimum parking requirements. The number of off-street parking spaces required in this subsection shall be provided on the same lot with the principal use or in combination with an adjacent lot, provided the applicant has secured a shared parking agreement and a conditional use permit as described in 42,544J. The proposed text amendments, if it's allowed, as I mentioned, would allow two adjacent sites to form a formal shared parking agreement, which could potentially eliminate need for additional unnecessary cost, land disturbance, impervious coverage, and lot coverage on each site. And I believe in the case of the applicant, there's a pretty large oak tree that would most likely need to come down to meet the parking requirements, so it's preserving some hardy vegetation as well. Looking at some of the other local communities, Nags Head, Duck, and Currituck, they have means of allowing shared parking between adjacent sites. It's not necessarily a by right use. For example, Duck, the required parking space for any number of separate uses may be combined in one lot. However, a special exception permit, town council may modify the requirements contained in the parking regulations. Essentially the same as doing a conditional use permit to allow shared parking between two. It looks like Kill Devil Hills, Southern Shores, Manio, and Dare County all required on one lot. In discussions and review, in discussion with the town attorney, it is suggested that if we do allow shared parking between two adjacent lots, that as part of the conditional use permit, that the town would require pedestrian access between the two sites. In the event that there's a ditch running between two sites, they'd have to put a little bridge to cross over so nobody can get hurt going from parking area to the principal use. For that, I've added a proposed 42,544J4 that would state, in the event that the shared parking agreement exists between adjacent lots, adequate and safe pedestrian access shall be provided from and to the shared parking areas. Planning board reviewed this at the February 26th meeting and voted unanimously to recommend approval with that staff recommendation included. And in the recommendation, the planning board found that the proposal is consistent with the Canton land use plan. That's really all I've got for this. If there's any questions that I can't answer, the agent for the applicant, Mr. Warren Edis, is here. Open it up to questions.
Okay, it's not fair to you, because you're fairly new, but it's my understanding that the town is kind of wanted shared parking wherever it was possible. Is that true, Richard? Yeah, shared parking, that's something that the town has always encouraged wherever possible?
No, I think the shared parking ordinance, that was added, I don't remember the exact date, but, we've had several proposals in the past where they wanted to use off-site parking.
Okay.
as part of the parking, and we had some issues with it. I don't know what this is being.
Okay, I had heard it be, I remember when they built the OBX Bank, that was one of the things they wanted them to do, and they didn't want to do it. All right. Council have any questions for Rob?
I do also. When you go into one of these agreements of shared parking with another business, and it makes the decision whether you're in compliance in the building that you're in, how about if the parking that you're sharing, they sell and change locations of that business, moves, and how does that agreement carry on? I mean, this shared parking, this has been a few businesses in the past. Is this something that's going to carry with that piece of property for is this an agreement where it's a 10-year, or how does this quite work?
That kind of came up at the planning board meeting, and Steve, you might be able to speak better on the legalities of it. But I believe it was discussed, you can put a certain time frame for if it does sell, that, you know, they have to either work out where they can continue the agreement, or the business that was using the extra parking would have to bring their site into compliance in the event that the new tenants or the new owner did not want to continue that, the agreement between the two.
Can I ask for clarification from?
They would have to have a written agreement that would be recorded to verify the fact and supply to the town that they have in fact entered this shared parking agreement, and the town will have to verify that both businesses still meet the parking requirements by sharing that parking in the way they do. Now, how long they have this agreement is up to the parties, and if the agreement ends for whatever reason, and the shared parking no longer is in effect, then those businesses have to be in compliance with the parking requirements absent a new shared parking agreement. So they could be out of compliance at some point if that happened.
And if there is not enough property on the site to comply, then?
Then they're going to be forced to restrict the use of some of their property.
Okay.
Now, the agreement is actually between two businesses.
It's between two businesses,
It
not
has
with the
nothing to
town.
do with running with the land.
No.
Yeah, so if somebody moves the business, or a new business comes into being in one of those locations, does that mean that it is automatically has to be renegotiated, or
Well,
how does that do?
No,
How does that
they
work?
can set their agreement up however they want to set it up.
I
And,
see.
You know, they could make it a permanent arrangement between the two properties if they wanted to. I don't know how that would work if use has changed and parking requirements change, but
Or
that would be
owners,
between.
or owners change.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's what
This
I'm kind of
agreement would
interested
be
in.
between the owners of this property, correct?
If they desired to make it run with the land, they could do that. I don't contemplate that that's going to happen. It's probably going to be an agreement between the two businesses for a set period of time.
Right, so if one of them is leasing the property, they can still do the agreement because they're responsible for how many parking places they have and whatever, according to the use that they have.
That's correct.
Okay.
The concern I hear is if the town approves this as it's set, we're not obligating an owner to continue on.
Continue.
No,
That's
That's between
That's your
them.
concern, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Okay.
think the applicant has.
Just making myself available, but I just want to point out that the shared parking agreement that we were provided by, this is Johnson, Burgess, Mizell, and Stroud is the business that wants this agreement, and their neighbor is amenable to it. But the town is also a party to the agreement. So anytime, any one of the three, it's three parties involved, any one of them could come out, if something was wrong or if there needed to be a change, I think the town has that control. And you may be able to correct me on that.
well, that's strictly for notification purposes. So if they come out of compliance or the agreement ends or the parties want to cancel it, the town knows.
Okay.
It doesn't obligate us to do anything,
No,
though.
we don't have to sign the agreement or anything.
Well,
We do.
we're a party to it in the sense that we want to be notified when this changes
Okay.
or there's some other arrangement that's going to be made.
So do you get a look at this agreement
Yes.
before? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Anyone else got questions
Yeah, I have one if everyone else is.
of him? Because we're still in public hearing.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe,
No, ask your questions while you have a chance.
well, I don't need to ask the applicant. I need to ask our planner. I am assuming that when you say adjacent lots, they share a property boundary.
Right.
There's not a street in between. You don't consider something that is divided by a street as an adjacent property,
Right,
correct?
it was just considered a
They just
shared
have
border.
a shared property line, that's,
Okay, any others before I call for speakers? Lynn, anyone signed up?
Yes, sir. David Hunt?
My name's David Hunt. I'm a resident and business owner here in the town of Kitty Hawk. And looking at the way this is, it's broken down into two parts. The text amendment simply gives someone the right to get a conditional use permit. It doesn't mean that it will automatically be granted. So I see no harm in doing the text amendment and then doing a case-by-case basis on the conditional use permit.
And that's the way it's set up.
Right, so, as far as passing the text amendment, I can see no reason how that could negatively impact any part of the town of Kitty Hawk, and I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Lynn,
No one else has signed up.
anyone else want to speak? Okay, before I close the hearing then, all right, anybody else got anything for Rob now? Because once I close the hearing, it's us. All right, I think that part's done. Do I hear a motion to go back in regular session?
So moved.
Do I hear a
second?
second? Did you second?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. What's council want to do with this? Do the motion.
I move to adopt the proposed text amendments to section 42544 and 42546 of the Kitty Hawk Town Code to allow shared parking between two adjacent sites as a conditional use. Town council finds that the proposed text amendment is consistent with the town's adopted CAMA land use plan and finds this amendment to be in the public interest.
Do I hear a second? Second.
May I ask a question? Does that include the staff comment about the adequate pedestrian access?
Yes,
between
with the addition. And I think he did put that into this.
I thought it was
Yeah, it's
there.
right in here. Yes, with the addition of paragraph 42, 544, J4, just to be specific about it.
Lynn, you okay with,
Yes.
you got it? All right. We had a second? Did we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Now, the next section is the conditional use permit, and this does require any speakers to be sworn. Do I hear a motion to go into public hearing?
Motion going to public hearing, Mr. Mayor. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now in public hearing, Rob? Is anyone else going to want to speak? Okay. Go ahead, Rob.
This is the conditional use permit that was running concurrently with the text amendment. The applicant is requesting the approval of a conditional use permit to establish a formal shared parking agreement between the restaurant adjacent to the property, which is BK Shuckers. As Mr. Reedus mentioned, the applicant is Johnson, Burgess, Mizell, and Straw. Sometime back, the accounting office got a building permit to convert approximately 1,453 square feet of existing attic space into 703 square feet of file storage and 750 square feet of office space to support additional employees. The additional floor space requires additional parking spaces to stay in compliance with the town parking standards. In the main time of year that the additional staff and employees come at the accounting firm is getting towards the end of this time of year, the January to April. The BK Shuckers, the proposed shared parking agreement, BK Shuckers would share 7 parking spaces with the applicant, which would bring them into compliance during their peak season when they have that additional staff. The applicant has agreed not to use the BK Shuckers parking spaces during the restaurant peak season business hours, which is 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. from May through September, and also not during special events. I guess the bike week is coming up, so they wouldn't be available to them during that time. The proposed shared parking would allow the applicant to fulfill town parking requirements without expanding their own paved parking area. Allowing the shared parking would result in the preservation of the existing landscaping, avoid any potential detrimental effects to adjacent properties if there's any erosion runoff that could negatively affect anyone, create additional stormwater issues. This would prevent that, as there will be no on-the-ground disruption going on. As I mentioned, the applicant's peak season is January to about April 15th, with their operating hours being Monday through Friday from 8:30 in the morning till 5 p.m. This is when the additional staff and parking is needed. The applicant is proposing that during the restaurant's off-season, which is October through April, they would be allowed to use the 7 shared parking spaces from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. During the restaurant's peak season, May through September, the 7 shared parking spaces would only be available to the applicant from 8:30 a.m. to 11 in the morning when the restaurant opens. And as I mentioned, during special events, it would not be available to them. Let's see. Per the standards of section 4299B7, in order to approve the application, the council must find that, must make the findings that the proposed conditional use, A, does not materially endanger the public health or safety. The proposed shared parking agreement creates no changes to existing conditions on the ground. From a public health and safety standpoint, there's no change to existing conditions. I think it would actually, at least in the short term, be a benefit to public health and safety, because you wouldn't have any construction traffic going in to create the additional parking spaces. B, does meet all required conditions and specifications. As was described in the above staff report, the proposed agreement has been designed to comply with all the applicable standards of the town code. C, will not substantially injure the value of adjoining property or be a public nuisance. The only adjoining property which is impacted by the proposed shared parking agreement is BK Shuckers. They're signing onto the agreement, so I don't think that they envision this as being a public nuisance or injuring the value. As I mentioned, there's no on-the-ground changes happening, so it's not going to affect any of the other surrounding properties. D will be in harmony with the area in which it is located and be in general conformity with the comprehensive plan. The proposed shared parking agreement has no impact on land use other than preserving existing open space, vegetation. So that would not be applicable to the comprehensive plan. Also, at the February 26th meeting, the planning board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the conditional use permit to establish a formal shared parking agreement between Johnson, Burgess, Mizell, and Straub at 4016 North Croatan and BK Shuckers at 4020 North Croatan, subject to the conditions outlined in the proposed shared parking agreement.
All right.
And I've put up one here, you can see I don't know how well it's focusing, but this is the BK Shuckers. These 7 spaces are what they're proposing to use as their shared parking. At the planning board meeting on February 26th, we did discuss the adequate pedestrian access, and the applicants are willing to add in some access point to get them from the BK Shuckers parking lot over to the accounting office.
All right. Anybody have a question of Rob?
No, I'm glad that you are going to do a walk over there. I went on that site, and because of the terrain there, I think it'll be a lot safer for the people going back and forth to see that. Made a little bit better access through there.
All right, we're in public hearing. Does anyone want to speak? Let the record show. No one's come forward. If there are no more questions, do I hear a motion to go back in regular session?
So moved.
Second? Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We're back in regular session. What does council want to do with this conditional use? We approved the first part.
Mr.
Looks like
Mayor?
we'd approved the second.
Mr. Mayor, I move to grant approval of this conditional use permit application to establish a formal shared parking agreement between Johnson, Burgess, Mizell, and Straub at 4016 North Croatan Highway and BK Shuckers at 4020 North Croatan Highway, subject to the conditions recommended by the planning board. Town council concurs with the conditional use finding in the staff's report, finds that the approval of this conditional use permit is consistent with the town's adopted Campbell use plan, and finds that granting approval is in the best public interest.
Do we hear a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any further comment? Discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. You have parking. Next, we have planning, and we call for a public hearing, and it deals with temporary signs and banners. Do we hear a motion to call for public hearing?
Mr. Mayor, I move to set a public hearing for the town council meeting on May 4th, 2015, regarding the proposed text amendments to update temporary sign and banner regulations.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. New business, Lillian Street Beach Access Parking Expansion Project. John, do you want to give us some update on that,
Yes,
please?
Mr. Mayor. It's been recommended by our engineer, John DeLucia, that we replace the existing asphalt curb and gutter at the Lillian Street Beach Access parking lot. The reason is because when people back up, they run into the existing asphalt curb and gutter that's there, and it's starting to deteriorate already, and over a period of time, it's going to eventually have to be replaced. So since we have a contractor out there on site, it would be cost-effective for us to go ahead and replace that asphalt curb and gutter with concrete curb and gutter, and give it a long life, in addition to the concrete curb and gutters going in the new parking area. So, and this would require about replacement of about 300 feet of concrete, of asphalt curb and gutter at a cost of $9,290.
Thank you. And I'll start off by saying I went out there to have a look at this. I don't see the degradation of the existing curbing. It looks to me like it's doing pretty good. We have a parking lot that's subject to inundation from time to time anyway. I don't think we need to get too fancy on it. This is an awful lot of money, for my mind, to tear up what is actually in pretty good shape, with the exception of down at the end where they're doing construction. And it looks like they've done some damage to that. I would hope that they would fix that with no cost to the town. How does the rest of the council feel?
I also went and observed, and on the southwest end of the asphalt, it seems that some of that has been torn up, and by the work being done on the parking lot that they're doing right now. And it's a small section, roughly 10 feet, maybe a little bit longer. There's a couple places where people have backed over the asphalt and actually put a couple of dents in it, I'm gonna call them. And some of the grass has grown up into the asphalt, and maybe some of the, some Roundup or something like that can be used to fix that. And other than that, I think it's holding up for what the job it's intended to do, to direct the water. Some of the, I'm not really sure what they're called, they're diverters maybe that are there to divert the water into the swell to hold the water. Some of those need to be cleaned out a little bit, but that has nothing to do with of this project. So I think if you put a brand new one up, it's going to have the wear and tear in a very short amount of time that people are going to jump it. And I think at this time, with the amount of projects that we have, I would hope that maybe we can wait on this to a later date.
Well, I went out to see it too, and now that my observations have been clarified by people who know what they're looking at, I also agree with what Jeff and the mayor said. Those little holes, little holes.
Actually
What are those
drained.
little holes?
They're not broken spots. They were put there on purpose. That's what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Just don't spend the money. I'm fine.
Spend it, don't spend it. All right, do I hear a motion to deny? That way we'll make it official.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and having denied the first, that means B is also denied. All right, so moving on down to a resolution in opposition to Senate Bill 369. John, would you brief us on that, please?
Mr. Mayor, we prepared a resolution to be sent to the county and state representative in opposition to Senate Bill 369. The Senate Bill 369 will result in the town losing $467,000 in annual sales tax revenues and a requirement to raise the property tax by 4.74 cents in order to maintain our existing services. It's recommended to oppose the Senate Bill 369 since it will have a tremendous negative effect on the financial health of the town's residents, as well as the ability to provide and protect the health and safety of our town residents.
And this is the representative, or not representative, he's the Senate, Senator Brown's, North Carolina Senator Brown's attempt to, in fairness of sales tax distribution. All right, do I hear a motion?
This is another big one, Mr. Mayor. I move the adoption of the resolution entitled "Resolution in Opposition of Senate Bill 369." I further authorize the mayor to sign and the town clerk to attest said resolution.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Hopefully that one will go down the drain. Next, we have an interlocal agreement. This is tied into the beach nourishment thing, and we need to do this tonight so that they can get on with the financing, basically. John, do you want to give us just a little bit of background on that,
Try
please?
to, explain this as much as I can. Like you said, the county has asked that we approve the interlocal agreement for beach nourishment. It includes estimated amounts for permitting costs and construction costs related to beach nourishment. The interlocal agreement does not include the interest on the debt service, legal fees, beach maintenance, renourishment costs, tax collection fees, and other operational costs related to the total project cost. Okay, that's something important to remember. Page 4 of the agreement lists the project funding of Kitty Hawk contribution of $10,185,309 and county contribution of $11,254,691 and an estimated project cost of $21,440,000. The total estimated project cost figure represents permitting cost of $870,000 and construction cost of $20,570,000 for the total estimated project cost of $21,440,000. The Kitty Hawk contribution of $10,185,309 is the amount the town will pay for the project as set forth from the special obligation bond financing procured with financial institution. Of the $10,185,309, Dare County will help to pay a total of $7,424,882 on the principal and interest paid by the town. And this is shown on page 5 of the agreement. And it's been estimated that the interest paid by the town would be $1,069,457 for a total amount borrowed of $11,254,766. In addition, like I said, there are costs related to tax collection fees, legal fees, and the maintenance that brings the total cost to the town of $23,327,770, which has been discussed before. And since the county's paying $7,424,882 on principal and interest of the town's debt service, the town would be paying $4,648,197 over the 5-year period. Mr. Michael has reviewed the agreement, and he's okay with the contents of the agreement. County manager is requesting that the council go ahead and approve the agreement with the condition that he will make a small change per the request of Kill Devil Hills, and the change would be on page 2, Article 1, 5th line would read, project manager means coastal planning and engineering of North Carolina, PC. That would be the only adjustment to the agreement.
Basically, the county is the bank, and each town is in charge of actually doing the project, but the money's coming from, mostly coming from the county, but they're going to be the bank where everything funnels through them, so we have to have this in order for that to work, I guess. All right, do I hear a motion?
I move approval of the interlocal agreement with Dare County shown as attached for the beach nourishment project with a small change forthcoming from the county manager as documented in the email from Kill Devil Hills and described herein. I further authorize the mayor, town clerk, and finance officers to sign said agreement once revised by Dare County.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, John, let's get that over to the county when we can.
So we'll.
All right, and next we have reports from the town manager.
I have nothing else to report to the council this evening,
enough.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Town Attorney,
Not anything for you tonight.
all right. And Town Council, Jeff?
Yes, I would like to, council and staff, and as well as the police department, received some inquiries about citizens' neighborhood watch. And so, under the instructions of the police chief Johnson, he assigned Officer Deaton to conduct a meeting on Poor Ridge, and I would just like to compliment the department and as well as Mr. Deaton, Officer Deaton, for doing a fine job of addressing the residents of Poor Ridge Road. He did a very good job. I think everybody was quite pleased that showed up. Also, I'd like to thank the Public Works and Willie. I think he's left me, but he did a great job of going over and cleaning up the debris on the beach to make sure it was as clean as he could without doing more damage than he was doing good. If anybody's been over there and looked to see what a great job that the Public Works did, they manually picked up rocks and put them in the back of, I don't know what the buggy they used, and carried them across and manually unloaded them, as well as used an excavator. And it required a lot of work, and I really appreciate it, and I know the residents appreciate it.
Okay. No, sir.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of things too. Also, I want to add to what you said about Willie. And he was out there on the beach today, checking out all of the areas that had had some problems on the north side of the town. And so he's still at it, and he said he was just going to make sure he got everything while he still had the equipment. So I think he saved us a lot of money and did something really good for the town. And the other thing I would like to do is, there's been it's been a kind of a long haul with all of the beach nourishment activity, and I just would really like to thank all of the staff for everything that they have done and how and being so responsive to answering questions and helping us out every chance they got. And it was a great job. Thanks.
Well, I certainly agree with all those comments. And, you know, I said it at the last hearing that they went above and beyond, crunching numbers, probably seeing numbers in their sleep, and answering the calls. I've come in here and witnessed the receptionist with a citizen in her face, telling her what for, and she had nothing to do with it. It was us that they should have been talking to. So, but she met them with a smile and said thank you and sent them on their way. Other than that, I don't have anything. This is our last public comment. Do we have any public comment?
I didn't really come here to comment, but something popped up when you were talking about beach nourishment. I wanted to at least pose a question to you all. Way back when, many years ago, as I tell my grandchildren, I'm raised with the dinosaurs, so this goes way back. When we were doing the federal project, or at least when they were preparing for it, I was working for the town, and the county person came to me, and we went over the project that affected Kitty Hawk. And he was in the process of getting easements on the oceanfront properties from the beach road out, okay? And these easements, as I was told, were basically just to prevent the individual properties from recouping what they lost as a result of the beach erosion. In other words, you know, half your lot was washed away, and you no longer can build under the current standards. The beach nourishment was not intended, as I understood it, to allow them to have their full lot back so they could build a bigger house, more density, more lot coverage, or whatever. So the easements were being acquired in that under the federal project to prevent that. So the beach nourishment project benefits everybody in the sense that it would prevent further erosion, but it wasn't necessarily to provide a benefit directly to those oceanfront properties. And my question is, does the current project have propose to have easements such as that?
Yes,
Or-
the project, any sand pump, and we've answered this a couple of times, but any sand pumped on that beach, the property owner, if it happens to be on a lot that was documented, will still own it in theory, but they can't do anything with it.
Okay,
They can't build on it, they can't move it, they can't push it around. If it blows up under a part that's not a part of what was pumped on there, then they can do whatever they want to with it within CAMA rules. But being able to build on to or add on to as a result of beach nourishment, as we all understand it from legal study, no.
okay.
Something else would have to change, including CAMA rules with vegetation, line of stable vegetation, a lot of those sort of things would have to go on.
Right.
I don't see that happening, and we've answered that 2 or 3 times.
Okay, okay, fine, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just would like, kind of going back on this.
Could you come up to the mic, please?
Don't have much to say, but just to bring us up to date, if someone on the board knows where we are on these pumping stations that we had getting rid of the excess water from a storm. It seems that we've kind of forgotten that with beach nourishment. Are we gonna wait for a storm to come and figure it out, or where are we on those pumping sites?
We have 2 pumping stations and 1 sump.
Where are they located?
There's one at, there's one down there off Poseidon, that's a station with standpipe. And there's one off Hawk Street, that's a station with a standpipe. And then we had already put in the sump down by Bird Street. So, and Willie advised, he said, that worked good. Let's see if the standpipes do what we want before we add any more. So we haven't forgotten anything, we just put a pause into it until we know if we're wasting money or not.
Right, makes sense. Are we planning on buying any pumps, or are we just gonna rent them like we did before?
We'll always rent because it's the better way to go. We don't have to maintain them, we don't have to keep them up. It's cheaper. We only use them when we need them, and someone else does the maintenance onto them.
Right, that makes sense. The question that arises on these, sites that are low and we have to get things going, it was discussed, and I never did hear the results of it. Do we have a standing permit to immediately take action to pump that water back, or do we have to apply and wait so many days?
Well, we have to apply, but they've been very good about being pretty instant on giving it to us.
Okay, so
But
it's
we do
not-
not have a standing permit.
All right, as long as it's not a dead issue, then we got somebody watching for us.
None of that's a dead issue. If we didn't go into beach nourishment, we were actually looking to try to do some sort of outfall. Anyone else? Yes, Danny?
I just wanted to get up here tonight and personally thank you all for your efforts and that of your staff and everyone you've been working with to reach this pass in regards to beach nourishment. I know that not a lot of people showed up tonight, and even at the last public hearing, but a lot of people that I've spoken to think it's a really good idea, and they agree with the way that you've needed to work to get it done. Maybe they don't understand how much work has gone into it and how much you've had to do and how much you've had to deal with to get it done. But I think there's a lot of people that are proud of you, and I really appreciate it. So,
Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, I'm getting ready to go home. How about the rest of you? All right, do we hear a motion to recess?
Motion to recess to Monday, April 27, 2015, at 10 a.m., Kitty Hawk Town Hall for a budget workshop.
Do we hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, folks. Thank you.